there, Ricky Tang here. How's it going? Sun's out. You might just be able to see. So now is as good a time as any to tell you what I think about the bike after 5,000 miles and about 6 months. So basically what we'll start off with is things I've realised. What I mean is really corrections maybe to statements I've made about the bike in the past. Now I've got to know it better. The first one I've mentioned in the track day video, one of them, is that the traction control is better than I thought it was. I thought it was quite rudimentary and chopped the power kind of quite brutally when you start to activate the traction control, but in reality that's more the wheelie control. As long as the front end's on the ground and the bike thinks you're about to spin the back wheel, it's actually very good in metering the power. It's actually hard to tell when traction control kicks in than when the light flashes. So yeah, traction control is actually really good, and I've barely actually activated it on the road. It's actually more on the track. Yeah, so traction control really gets a thumbs up in my book. The other correction I need to make is about the rear ABS. Now, in my 5 things I don't like about this bike, I mentioned that the rear ABS is too sensitive. It kicks in too often when I'm braking with both brakes. What I've come to realise there is that the problem only really manifests is when I'm on both brakes, particularly on the back brake, and using the auto blipper to go down the gears. If I'm actually braking with both brakes and not changing down a gear, the rear ABS doesn't have a belly. It's fine, but that's not often you do that. If you're braking with both brakes, you probably want to slow down quite quick and you want to match the gears to the speed you're doing. So I've understood it a bit better. It's not that the ABS is a crap, but it seems to be a bit confused when I'm using the auto blipper to go down the gears at the same time. So another thing I've realised with this bike is the bike is somewhat underdamped when this dynamic ESA is in road mode. And by that I mean when you're in fast kind of undulating roads or bumpy roads, the bike does rock up and down on its suspension quite a lot. It doesn't kind of settle or damp out undulations straight away. The thing is with that, I'm not trying to defend it, it might sound like I'm about to though, is although it's jumping up and down, even if I'm in a bend, it doesn't deflect, it doesn't kind of change direction, it just jumps up and down on the suspension. So I think that kind of tells me the chassis is rigid and handling the conditions, but yeah, the damping is soft. I was impressed with road mode at the beginning because it could handle the crappy roads of the UK really well, and when it did kind of get a bit up and down, a bit boingy, it still maintained control. Like I said, it didn't get deflected, didn't send me offline. So overall I was still enjoying it, but I've realised now that yeah, the suspension could do with some attention, or at least the road damping side of things. When you put it in dynamic ESA, the bike does firm up quite a bit, and not as much as to make it a stiff, uncomfortable ride, but it handles sporty riding better. The downside is it's a little bit less comfortable on most roads when you ride over crap, potholes and bits where the tarmac's just been ripped up. I should keep it in dynamic all the time, but I keep switching it back to road because I like the comfort. Even when I'm cracking on and the bike's doing this, it's not doing that. It's not kind of again changing direction unnecessarily. So most of the time I'm in road mode on the damping. Throttle wise, I'm in dynamic unless it is raining, pretty much. I'm not a big fan of the road mode on the throttle, because I find it takes a bit too much of a twist for a given amount of acceleration. The throttle action just seems a bit long. Dynamic is just about right. Sometimes a touch snatchy on the bottom end, but nothing I can't live with. Now, on to things I really like about this bike. And I think number one really has to be the torque. I just love the grunt this engine puts out. It's so enjoyable. If you give the throttle a tug in pretty much any gear from even a bit below 3000 RPM, as I'll demonstrate here, I am in 4th. You might not be able to tell on GoPro or on my cameras, but 4th gear, 3000 RPM, it picks up so readily. Oh, just so much fun. Love the torque. So yeah, you can be as low as 2,500 RPM, just a bit above that, even in top gear, and it pulls, yeah, well. But get close to 3,000, it's just so keen to accelerate. And probably the next thing, which has surprised me, I think, as I've got to know the bike, is the chassis. It's stable. You could maybe argue boring, heavy, slow. Yes, it's not an S1000R or a Tuono or a Super Duke. It's not trying to compete with those. But the handling it just mops up a lot of abuse, let's put it that way. I've pushed this bike in ways I didn't expect to be able to on the road and on the track, and it laps it up. It just doesn't seem to get unstable. Yeah, I don't think I've had any major high speed or low speed wobbles from the bike. No weaves from the suspension, no tank slappers, which is in stark contrast to the S1000R, where nearly every ride the bike misbehaved. It went into a weave or wobble somewhere. However, I will say that recently I took a test ride on a Aprilia Tuono 660, video coming up, but after I got back on this bike, it felt so heavy. So heavy and slow to steer, and you felt kind of quite insulated and detached from the road compared to an Aprilia Tuono 660. But it's all relative, so after a few miles I got used to this again. I was back up to my usual tricks. Now forgive me, but I'm not really one to look too much at build quality. I don't spend hours poring over my bike seeing what's getting worse, you know, what's getting corroded. But as far as I can tell, the bike's holding up pretty well. Mind, it's only 6 months old, so it should be. But still gets comments. I think the colour scheme, the engine, and the sheer size of the thing attracts attention. Oh, can I tell you another thing I like about the bike? Oh god, that's good. Front brakes, very powerful as far as I'm concerned. You may disagree if you've tried them. Yeah, the haze brakes on this bike seem to slow you down very effectively when you need them to. And the bike feels stable while you're doing it as well. On to things I don't like about the bike. Weight. That's the thing that kind of concerned me about the bike right from the first test ride back in 2019, and it hasn't really got any better. The bike hasn't been on a diet since I bought it. When you're riding, unless you've just come off an Aprilia Tuono 660, when you're riding, the bike doesn't feel especially heavy or ponderous or slow. But when I'm pushing it around, I was about to say when you're pushing it around, but I don't know who you are. When I'm pushing this bike around with the engine off, it does feel heavy. I'm not a very big or strong guy, so yeah, I don't like the weight of this bike, but it doesn't feel too heavy when you're actually riding. And the power this big heavy engine is putting out kind of more than makes up for the weight, especially when you can do that. Stop it. Yeah, other than that, things I actively dislike about the bike, well, I kind of covered that in the 5 things I don't like video. So there's nothing really new really since that video that puts me off about the bike. Now in terms of servicing and servicing costs, I've only had one service so far. That was the 600 mile service. Now the only comment I can really make on that is it costs £180, which is a bit spicy in my opinion, but I think unfortunately you have to expect that with BMW servicing at official BMW dealerships. It's not cheap. So yeah, other than the servicing, I've not had to spend a lot on this bike. The only thing I've really spent some good money on, other than the exhaust, less said about that the better, is the tyres. So the bike came on Metzler Roadtech Z8s from the shop. I think Roadtech's in the name. Z8 certainly is. And I had no particular feelings towards the Z8. I was busy getting used to the bike and enjoying the bike, and the bike seemed to stop, go around the corners quite happily. So all was well in my world. But at about 3,500 miles, I noticed that the tyres were past their best, especially the back one. So knowing that I had at least one track day lined up before the end of the year, possibly 2 or 3, I opted to try and find some sportier tyres. Now, it's been a long time since I had Metzlers, but I thought I'd stick with the Metzler family. And I wanted to find something sportier that was kind of well reviewed on the internet. Now, the tyre I opted for is the Metzler Sporttech M9RR. But to be honest, there weren't that many reviews of the M9RR around on the interweb, but the M7RR, the predecessor, had been around. I think it's a predecessor, not a sister tyre, could be wrong. But the M7RR was well reviewed and seemed to be well respected, so I thought I'd take a punt on the M9RRs. And I've got to tell you that the M9RRs are leagues ahead of the Z8 in terms of perceived grip, feel, confidence. I've got about 1,700 miles, I think, on these tyres now, and they still feel better now than those Z8s did when the bike was new. It's yeah, much better tyres. Like I said, I got them before track day. In fact, I got them about 2 days before track day. And when I first took to the track, which was Bedford Autodrome, the tyres had about 100 miles on them. But the tyres performed really well at that track day, and that track day was actually wet. It kind of went between dryish to damp to wet. I went on the track in all those conditions, and you can feel the feedback. You can tell when it was dry, you can tell when the track was greasy, you can tell when it was just pure wet, and so much feedback coming from those tyres. Hugely impressive, I thought. But having said that, I'm not a tyre guru. I can just tell you what I felt. After the track day, I rode home 100 miles that evening, and sometimes through heavy rain, and the tyres just performed again really well. And I thought they wouldn't be that good in the wet because they were sporty tyres, but I think they've got 100% silica construction, whatever that means. It just gave a lot of confidence in the wet as well as in the dry, and I'd be happy to stick them on again, no doubt. So overall, after 6 months and 5,000 miles, I'm really happy with the bike. It's behaving as well as I hoped it would, and after putting the Metzlers on, it's actually performing even better than I thought it could. So I'm really pleased with it. Yeah, anything I've forgotten about, just mention it in the comments. Oh, I know, I'll do a little segment now. What have I not mentioned yet? One thing is vibration. And generally speaking, I think the vibrations are well handled on this bike. The only thing is, if I'm cruising and I keep it around 4,000, 5,000 RPM, then my right hand tends to go to sleep eventually, so some tingles go through there on the right bar for some reason. Oh yeah, another thing I forgot, fuel consumption. Now I haven't actually kind of made my own measurements. I've got to admit I'm relying on the bike computer, so maybe take that with a pinch of salt, but I'm looking at the Trip 1 computer, which I haven't reset in about 1,400 miles, and it's saying that I'm doing 57 miles per gallon. And in terms of creature comforts, loving the electronic suspension, damping on the robo notwithstanding, the fact that it's adjustable is very nice. Cruise control, mint. Heated grips, well, I've not really need them this summer. Well, once or twice I have. They don't get very hot, but they are good. Mirrors, well, they come loose now and again, but that's my fault, I think, because I have taken them off and on several times to fit my handguards. And I've not quite done a good job of tightening them up properly. So that's not ideal, but I think that's more me than anything else. The actual quality, yeah, they vibrate a bit, especially when you've got the throttle wide open and accelerating, but they give a decent view behind, I find. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with me. If you've got an R1250, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with any of the points I've raised. If you haven't got an R1250 and you're maybe shopping for one, I hope that this video helps. If I've missed anything else, do drop me a line in the comments. If you like my video and like me, oh bless you, stick with me. Please hit that subscribe button for more videos. I've got quite a few videos coming up, short ones and longer ones. Off the top of my head, bikes I've ridden recently I've not yet made videos about. The Aprilia Tuono 1100, the Super Duke GT, the Multistrada 1200 V4S, the MT09, F900R BMW, Tuono 660. Yeah, lots of bikes. Enough videos to kind of take us into winter time, I think. So for more bike reviews and more vlogs, that sort of deal, yeah, hit subscribe, stick with me. Take care guys, see you in another one.